It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview Ryan Nagy, who is the Seattle Mariners groundskeeper. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brandon. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to start working in professional sports?
Well, I've always been really interested in sports, especially baseball. I've always had a passion for baseball. And even as a kid, like going to the stadium was one of my favorite things. And I think that's really cool and how it ties in with being a groundskeeper, because one of my favorite things was always the field and just something about the smell of the grass and even just the environment of being at the stadium. And now I get to work in a stadium every single day, which is pretty awesome.
What was your experience like working with the Egram Pirates?
Oh, the Pioneers?
Yes, the Pioneers.
Yes, that was fun. So that was a summer ball. It was collegiate. So basically a lot of D1 players would go there in the summertime. And it's pretty small overall, the organization. So it was fun. It was a lot of just interns basically volunteering. Definitely taught a bit of creativity because we didn't have huge budgets or anything, but tons of fun too. We played a lot of ping pong that summer, and it was good times.
What was your experience like working with the sports turf with the Little League Internationals?
That was an internship I did right after high school. It was really awesome. Tons of fun. I wasn't sure what it would be like going into it, but it was great. Everyone there knew, I guess, that it was Little League, so I was a little worried that people might take it a little too serious or something, but it was really just about having fun and making sure the kids were having fun. And I mean, for us, making sure the fields were safe and playable. That way the kids, can do their things without any worries. And it was really awesome. Throughout the summer, we'd have baseball camps throughout the weeks. And so the kids would have opportunities to learn and train, and we would patch behind them and, prep the fields. And then obviously that all adds up all the way to the Little League World Series, which that was a blast. Groundskeepers from all over come in for that. And I mean, good times for sure.
When you worked with the Williamsport Crosscutters, how was that experience like?
That was awesome. Definitely a good learning experience. It was minor league baseball, so short season single A, but that field is where they play the MLB Little League Classic, which every year for 3 years in a row until last year because of COVID, they would bring in 2 teams from the major leagues to play on that field. So minor league ballpark, but major league field. So it was a very quality hands-on experience.
Can you talk about, of course, transitioning from the minor leagues and to the Little Leagues too, when you were at Coastal Carolina as the sports turf department?
Yeah. So after those experiences, I ended up going to college right by Coastal, basically a college called Horry Georgetown, which is essentially connected to Coastal Carolina, shares the same gate and everything. So it worked out. In between classes, I would be able to go over and work on the sports turf crew, and weekends, I'd be working all the tournaments and prepping the fields, and a large variety of different sports and opportunities there. We had a artificial turf football field, so we'd work with football games there, but then also, natural baseball fields, softball fields, soccer, you name it, we were doing it.
What do you learn in classes as a sports turf major?
All different things. So we'll do classes on soils because that's very important. If you don't have good roots, you're not going to have a good turf plant. Obviously, nutrients are super important as well. So we'll take classes on how to create good fertility programs. There's definitely a lot of science involved. So different classes on calibrating sprayers even. We took a lot of classes on pest management, which sometimes is diseases for grasses or could be insects, multiple different things that can impact the plant health. Definitely, it's interesting. It's a lot of people say that it's half science, half art. So it's good to have the sciencey background, but it's also good to have a little hands-on.
What does a typical sports turf do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it definitely depends on the sport. My passion, as I said, is definitely baseball. So when the team's in town, we're almost equipment managers in a way. We kind of work hand in hand with them. We'll set up for BP. We'll, move screens around, all different things like that, but also prep the field. So we'll be mowing. We also have to make sure the skin, which is what we call the dirt area, is properly prepped. So the moisture is super important for that. We want a nice cleat in, cleat out is what we call it, which is almost like, I guess, picture like a cork board. You just want something to stick in and stick out without chunks flying out everywhere, because our main concern is player safety and playability. And if we can keep that under wraps, 70% of the game is played on the clay. So it's important to have that managed right.
What does a sports groundskeeper do on a typical day?
Well, so it depends on the day. If the team's in town, we'll get there. And as I said, basically that whole thing. And then into pre-game, which is where we're doing all the fun stuff like lining the field and, giving it that final water as fans are going in. Then off days when the team's out of town for a week is when we really get to work on the health of the grass itself and get it back into shape, because it's taken abuse for that week or so. So we'll do things called aerating, which is a big machine that basically pokes holes into the grass. We'll do all different sorts of things, basically any little minor repairs. So sometimes, the mounds might be just a little hair off. So we want to make sure that they're always dialed in. That's super important for us. The edges are also super important. So when the team's out of town, we'll go through every little edge and make sure that we're dialed in.
Can you talk about, of course, what the difference between sports turf and groundskeeper is?
Yeah, so sports turf, basically, I'll explain. Turf grass is a kind of grass. There's many different kinds of grasses. Corn and bamboo are technically grasses. So turf grass specifies that it's mowable, basically. If you think of anything in your yard as basically a turf grass. Sports turf is managing those turf grasses. So basically that's the point of sports turf. Groundskeeping is typically the job that manages sports turf. So sometimes people call it the sports turf department because you deal with grass. Sometimes groundskeeping. Some fields will call it, field operations or something else like that. But it's all dealing with safety of the field and also aesthetics. We do enjoy mowing patterns and painting logos and stuff like that too.
Can you talk about, of course, getting the job with the Seattle Mariners and what that was like?
Yeah, so that was last year was my first season. I met with the previous head groundskeeper, Bob Christofferson, and the assistant Tim Wilson in Cooperstown, New York. I met with them and they offered me a job out here. And I mean, I always wanted to be in the major leagues as a little kid, as a player. And then as I got older, I thought it would be pretty neat to do that as a groundskeeper. And it's definitely an awesome opportunity. I love working for the Mariners. It's a great organization for sure.
What is it like working in the MLB for the Mariners?
It's fun. A lot of fun for sure. It's definitely a little different than, say, a minor league field or college even. We have an awesome staff, which is great. Also, it's really fun playing with technology because we do have a little better of a budget, say, than a smaller level. We have really cool things like we have grow lights, which we were actually just cleaning them today, and we'll be putting them out next week to kind of, because of the shade, a lot of our right field basically doesn't get any sun through this time of the year. So that's an interesting thing. We bring out these big lighting rigs that help the grass to grow out there, since it doesn't have any light naturally, so we have to bring it artificially. And then we also have some cool new electric mowers, which is awesome, just kind of experimenting to help with the environment and stuff. And different moisture meters we've been playing with. We just installed some new ones. They're called Spio, and it's cool. It's an app you can see on your phone what the moisture is in the soil, what the salinity is, all different stuff like that.
Can you talk about, of course, how you design, of course, the S on the field?
Yeah, so typically in the past, we would put a logo behind home plate, I think is what you're referring to, where we'd paint that. Basically, there's a giant tarp, and there's little holes in it that are in the shape of the outline of the S, and we'll order it from a company that specializes and makes those. And so we'll trace those and we'll remove the tarp, and then it's like connecting the dots. So you take the big paint machine, you mix up your paint, and you trace the outside line with, whatever color. If it's Sundays, we might have some yellow in there for the throwback kind of colors we have, or, it could be white, but either way, that's how we end up doing it.
Can you talk about, of course, on game day, what you do on game day?
Yeah, so game day, me personally, I take care of the mound as of last year, and it's probably the plan for this year as well. So when I get there in the morning, I'll patch it from the previous game, and that takes a little while in the morning, and then we'll all end up mowing together. We have walk mowers for the infield and sidelines, and then the outfield will have typically two guys will be riding our giant riding mowers. And so we'll mow for a little while, and after that, once we have that all taken care of, maybe cleaning up the dugouts a little bit too, and the bullpens, we'll take a lunch, and then we'll set up for BP. Sometimes it'll be early work, so definitely communication with coaches is important to find out what's going on. We always want to be on top of that. And so we'll set up for BP, maybe a little early work, whatever's going on. And at that point, sometimes pitchers will be throwing their side sessions in the bullpen. And so we'll kind of patch around them too, depending on what's going on. And then after that, we tear down BP, and our game crew comes in, which is more groundskeepers. Basically, we have that come in to help us so we can all just get the field looking money for the first pitch. And so we all have our own little special jobs, whether it's carrying off the L screen for the pitching coach, or someone else is pulling the string line that we're going to paint down. And it's pretty cool to watch the team all work together to make the field look awesome.
On a typical day, like let's say if the New York Yankees are coming into Seattle, what time would y'all have to be there to set up the field so the players can get that like excitement right before game time?
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of people, assume, well, I mean, they must get there at 5 if the game starts at 6, right? And there's nothing else going on earlier in the day. But, it takes a while. We put a lot of effort into making sure everything about the field is ready to go. So kind of depends on the day. If it's, say, like a 1 o'clock in the afternoon game, a lot of times we'll get there at probably around 7 a.m. Typically on those days, there's not going to be early work or quite as much BP. They tend to relax on those days. On a normal homestand, we kind of will stagger our starts, but sometimes we'll have guys there at 8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m. for like a 6:30 start.
Of course, after you get started with the day, do y'all get to stay and like see the team play throughout the night or throughout the day, or do y'all have to go home?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, last year actually, because of COVID, Mariners are definitely very careful on following protocols and stuff. So we were making sure we were leaving at the exact right time. That way we only have the proper amount of people in the building at a time. But in a normal season, yeah, where we can watch the game, and sometimes we'll have some of the crew working the game. There's always people working the game just in case. Other stadiums have to worry about tarping the field, if there's rain. Thankfully, we have a closable roof, but we drag in between the third and sixth inning usually just to continue making sure the field is playable. And so we'll normally have, I don't know, somewhere around like 10 people stick through the game specifically for that job. But yeah, last year was unique because we made sure we only had the right amount of people in the building.
How has, with y'all having a portable roof where it can come in, how has that helped the grounds of the baseball field?
Well, it's huge. It's definitely a big benefit. It is interesting though, because it does take probably about 10 minutes to close. So you still do have to track the weather systems and, make the calls right. But it's a lot easier from a grounds crew's perspective than pulling a tarp, because that is a lot of effort. A lot of people will refer to it as the tarp monster, because if the wind gets under it, it can be quite the interesting process. It's really nice having a roof, though, I'm not gonna lie.
What is something that you learned now that you didn't know beforehand starting as a groundskeeper?
I mean, I learned a lot for sure, and I keep learning. Could be simple things, even from knowing how to mow straight. I mean, that that takes practice, and all the way up to calibrating sprayers and budgets and stuff like that. I've learned a lot about that.
What is something that you learned now that you didn't know before starting in sports turf?
Um, I guess. I mean, there's definitely been a lot of different things that I've learned about sports turf. Trying to think of a good fun tidbit. I guess honestly, one of the things that I guess never really thought about is just how important roots are in grass. It really is important to have strong soils and a strong base for it, which in turn makes it safer for the athlete too, as they can plant their feet and they know they can trust our turf, which is something that we're really passionate about.
What advice would you give upcoming future people looking to get into sports turf and being groundskeeper on the MLB level or even in the baseball level, period?
Well, definitely experience is huge. When I was in high school, I was able to meet David Meller, who's the head groundskeeper for the Boston Red Sox. There's a few documentaries on him on ESPN, which I would highly recommend watching those. But I got to meet him, and he said, experience is big. Get as much experience as you can. And so pretty much anytime my family would go on vacation, or if I was some reason in a new town, I would contact whatever the local groundskeeper was and ask if I could job shadow him. And honestly, or even sometimes her. And that was huge in building my experience and knowledge. And networking is really big in this industry. There's a lot of people who are willing to help, which is really awesome. So I would say definitely reach out to any groundskeeper and see where it goes from there.
That's wonderful advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
So my main turf account, or if you want to keep up with our little updates on our grass escapades, I guess, would be on Twitter. It's called Tamp Champ. It's my name, Ryan Nagy, but it's at Tamp Champ, which is TAMPCHAMP, which it's based on tamping, which is the tool that we use to pack the clay on the mound and at the plate. And so at Little League World Series, the nickname Tamp Champ kind of came about as I was tamping a lot of mounds during that week. And so I kind of liked that and stuck with it.
That's wonderful. Thank you again, Ryan, for your interview, and best of luck in this upcoming season.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brandon.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Ryan, for your interview, and best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.